Hey, Mama.
Hey, there she is. Hi.
How are you? How are you? Oh,
I'm so good.
can
I
you
was
hear
like,
me?
I'm not sure if she's doing it through Ladies of Hip Hop or through Michelle, but let me just give it a try. I should have clarified.
Today's a hip hop. Yes, for sure, for sure.
Hey,
Can
so
you
good
hear
to
me?
see
I'm gonna turn.
you.
I'm gonna turn this up a little bit.
Okay.
Ah, there we are. Because I couldn't hear you.
How are you, Michelle?
I'm good. I can't complain. Just taking this craziness day by day. What about you?
I'm in the same boat,
Yeah.
like every day there's some more news, something else, you feel like you're in the gist of it and everything's okay, and then something else comes up and I'm like, so it's like this emotional roller coaster, especially as artists,
For sure. For
uh,
sure.
it's really, really tough. But for everybody that's listening, my name is Jackie Lopez. I'm the founder and co-founder and co-artist director of Versus Style Dance Company. And today we're going to be interviewing my dear friend, mentor, colleague. I look up to this woman so much. And the one and only Michelle from the Ladies of Hip Hop. I'm so excited for our folks to get to know you. I realize that every interview we've had, it's been with the guys. And I love the guys. I definitely love.
We love the guys.
Of course. I love Rennie. I love Why Not. I love Pierre. I love Mike Song. Like all these amazing guys. But I was telling you, I'm ready for a woman. And of course, the first in the list has to be Michelle.
Oh, thank you, love.
I have so much respect and admiration for everything that you do. And I just feel I want to take advantage of this platform and, of course, the circumstances of our world to engage in more conversations. And I know it's nothing new. A lot of folks are engaging now and doing it.
Yeah. But
still, it gives me a reason to do two things: connect with you and catch up, so it feels like a great conversation. But then also for people to get to know you and your strength and your story and your resilience and everything that goes in between to make anything happen.
I appreciate it. Well, thanks for having me, love. I feel special. And the feeling is super, it's mutual, mad respect and love for what you're doing. I love that I can get on the phone and chat with you and talk through something, these trials and tribulations of running companies, especially nonprofits, especially in a world that, dancers don't get, I think, the respect or, the money that they should, right? And companies as well, and just navigating all that stuff. So it's always great to have someone to call and talk to about that. And I've called you many times, stressed out, like, yo, you got a second, and even though it's like hard for us to connect, we connect when we absolutely need it, so I really appreciate that, and I appreciate you for that.
Oh, well, likewise for me, because believe it or not, through our trials and errors, we learn from each other, right?
For sure.
It's like whatever you're going through, I'm like right away thinking ahead on how I could apply it, and hopefully vice versa. I'm just at a point in my career where I'm just ready to engage and empower all the women, especially the women of color that exist in my life, to keep providing these platforms, because there's not that many for us. And if there is, we make it happen, and what goes with that. So of course, I think in advance, I send you a list of questions. I'm also open for it to navigate and organically go where it needs to go. But what's really important for me is for people to know your personal journey, specifically within hip hop and the arts. I want folks to know, where did all this begin? Where did you begin for your love with hip hop and dance as a whole? Just give us a sense of where you're from, where you grew up. I think that's so important, because it shapes the story as to who you are today, right? So please, this is about you, Michelle. People need to learn.
And I love to talk about myself.
No, I know that. And I
I mean, in this kind of, in this time, in this situation that we are in, we're all, I think, pivoting and making changes and adapting to things that may not be our happy place or our strength, but I'm getting there, and I'm okay actually with sharing, especially when it's with family. So for sure. I mean, long story short, I'm part of that Philly lineage. My mom went to Simon Gratz High School in North Philly. She was born and raised in North Philly. I was born in Philly and stayed there till I was about 5 or 6, and then we moved to New Jersey to get away from North Philly, because at the time, now it's like Northern Liberties and all these like nice gentrified spaces, you know. Before it was like shoot 'em up gallery, you know, it was a very dangerous, very drug heavy. There was a lot of police brutality in Philadelphia. We had some very famous mayors who were, you know, all about like, you know, kill or be killed, in terms of, you talk about, you know, police violence on citizens. So anyway, my mom moved us to Jersey, but, you know, being from Philadelphia and moving to this like small town in Jersey, we never really fit in as a family, and we were the only ones in our family living down there at the time. And so we spent most of our summers and any free time, all of our like family events, back in Philadelphia. And so, you know, I was always there, and I always knew, you know, that I would go back. And so as soon as I graduated high school, you know, I mean, dance, in terms of just like growing up, I just grew up dancing. My uncle worked at a radio station in Philly called WDAS, which is like your WBLS. It's like, or New York's WBLS. It's a soul station out here, right?
Gotcha.
And so in terms of music, my mom's house looked like this, except that it was like a whole wall. It was like an entire whole wall of nothing but music. And so, you know, since my uncle worked at the radio station, we would get all these white labels and like stuff that was just like, you know, hadn't been released yet. And wait, where'd Jackie go? I see blinds.
A technical issue there.
Oh, it's all good. And we're back. And so, you know, we grew up with nothing but music and dance around us. You know, it was a very big part of Black culture. You know, it's the same story that most people of color have, you know. I grew up dancing with my family. I learned all the dances from my mom, from my uncles. Like, you know, my mom threw house parties, you know. I remember sitting on the steps, like, just like, and getting yelled at, get upstairs. And we'd sneak back down once it got like dark and quiet, and just like, you know, watching everything. So, you know, it's that same story of like, I don't know that I have like, oh, I had this moment of when I fell into love with hip hop, because, you know, it was just another part of what, you know, was already happening in terms of music and dance in my life. And so even I think early on, what we know as early hip hop stuff, my mom was teaching me that stuff, you know. Or, you know, I remember going to block parties in the summer in Philly, you know, and, you know, learning dances, and, you know, and then going home, you know. So I still, you know, like, I never really connected to where I, you know, grew up and went to high school and all that stuff. I mean, I really only have like one or two friends even from high school. So, you know, and then I think I left at 19. So I left very early. I didn't go to college until I was 24, because I wanted to be a dancer, and because I didn't grow up, even though I was like part of every live performance we had at school. I was part of the Renaissance Club, you know, I was part of the dance team. I was a cheerleader. I ran track. I did basketball stats. Like, I was super active in school, and very much like a part of anything that I could be a part of. I never went to school for dance. It just wasn't an option. We didn't have the money, you know?
I can relate.
And then also I went to a ballet class when I was younger, and, you know, I didn't have a pink tutu. I had a maroon tutu, and I had non-matching stockings, and I had, you know, used ballet shoes, and the ballet teacher ignored me. And I was like, okay, that's definitely not for me. You know, I was the only Black girl. I couldn't get my hair in a bun. It was an Afro puff. You know, it's just like, it was one of those like typical, you know, experiences as a young Black girl back then, you know, before it was like the thing, you know. Now it's like, you know, brown girl love and all this self-love and all that stuff.
Beautiful. Which is beautiful. For sure. But we just, at the time, there was not those examples. And I think that's what makes your story so unique and powerful, because you did grow up in a time where you didn't have these positive role models, you know, or a sense of like, even with education and moving forward and pursuing it in ways that I think was so obvious the way media presents things, you know.
Yeah.
Props to your parents, you know, for sharing that love for music. I mean, I could totally relate as a Latina woman, always listening to music, going to parties, and realizing that I was always a part of this culture. I was never just, oh, hey, what's this? No, I grew up in it. And that's what when we hear the music, it's just a part of the extensions of all of our stories, you know? So hearing that, I think it's just beautiful still to share, because people need to know that if you're embedded in it and you're a part of the culture already, you already, even before that, prior, it was called hip hop, you know, because it was a social, beautiful experience of people of color coming together. So that's what I'm getting, and that's just so beautiful. And I love props, and thank you for sharing that you didn't go to school until later. 24?
24, I went to
because so many times people think there needs to be this specific way and how things need to unfold. And guess what? It doesn't have to happen that way. And that you went
that way all the time.
Yes, and that you were 24, and look at you now. You look 25. So
that's up, girl. Yeah, times 2. Okay.
There you go. But please, I also, you know a little bit about you, and I think it'd be great. As you know, a lot of our work is with the youth and young women of color to be inspired by the possibilities. And I would love for you to share a little bit more in depth about your experience at Temple University and Drexel University. Like, tell us a little bit, as a woman of color, as a Black woman pursuing, you know, an education, how was that experience for you? And then how did you use your degree and what you learned in school to what you do today? It's a big question. It's all intertwined. But
that's all right. Let's get into it. So, I mean, for me, going, you know, like I ended up going to school for what was going to be my real job. And it was funny because at that time is like when I was really deep into club culture and house culture, because I had kind of turned off from hip hop a little bit. It got a little rough for me. And I'm sure you can attest to this. You know, I mean, now that it's all like, it's funny to see films about NWA and, like, you know, it's all like real gravy now, right? It's all good, but it was rough. Like, if you went to hip hop parties back then, you know, you didn't know if you were going home that night. So, you know, even though I stayed in love with hip hop music, I definitely pivoted to house music, or what back then was club, right? Because we would go to the club and they would play everything, you know. So, you know, it was still an extension of what I grew up learning and listening to, because they played, you know, they would play, I don't know, whatever, R&B, and they would play salsa, and, you know, and you would go and it would be these hodgepodge of people. Little known fact, like when I first started going out in what now is known as house dancing, the person who inspired me most and who was my best friend for years before I met Marge and who I danced with was Dalia Gonzalez. That was like, her family was like my family. All of her cousins, like I rode deep with my Latino sisters, and they were from Delaware and I was living in Philly, and we were inseparable. Me and her would be together. We would just sit, you know, we'd go to Sound of Music in Philly, buy records, and then sit in front of the record player and listen to music. It was, you know, it was that time for me. You know, everyone has that time, you know, and for me that was, you know, kind of a life-changing time. And, you know, even though I was enrolling in college, I knew I always wanted to be a dancer. Like, I was obsessed with ailey. I always wanted to be an ailey dancer. I was actually obsessed with ballet too. I love ballet.
Wow.
But, you know, Michele Byrd-Mcphee on PBS was like my shit, you know, sorry. But Nutcracker was like, you know, and then Revelations, like you know, it was on repeat on, you know, PBS. And so, you know, that was my only entry point. And then Fame. And so all these things that really influenced me growing up. And then my mom is a designer. She still is, but she was like hardcore back then. She had her own clothing line. She had her own models. And so, you know, I would be part of her shows in ways that, like, we would be like dance entertainment. So we might hustle or, you know, whatever before the fashion show started. And so, you know, I had this entrepreneurial mom who, you know, by the time I was in college, she had her own hair salon and her own clothing salon. And so I was like, I'm going to go to college because I just don't know what I want to do. I don't have any training. I can't audition, because that's when I found out, like, you have to audition to go to college. I was like, I can't, you know, like, you know, you got to teach a class, you got to take a ballet class. I was like, okay, that's not going to be for me. So I enrolled in Temple and was originally going to going to school for PT, but because of the club scene, PT is like going to school to be a doctor. I mean, literally. You spend 7 years, and after like 2 years and trying to hang out at the club all night and go to class, I knew it wasn't going to work. I knew it wasn't going to work. So
difficult.
So I changed my major, and I became a public health major, and I got my degree in public health. And right after college, I really started to get really deep in the Philly house scene, and started to actually work with some of like local choreographers, all like small, you know, local music acts and stuff. And at the time, you know, it was people like the Roots, who were back then, the Square Roots, Jill Scott, Music Soul Child. All these people were all coming up in Philly at that time, right? They're bubbling. You know, this was like Jill was performing in like small clubs, you know, like it was just like hanging out with folks, you know, that, you know, just regular old smoke folks, you know. So you know, that was like, the music scene was so rich. We had these amazing DJs, you know, like Rich had just started kind of spinning, you know. We had Cosmo Baker, we had King Britt, we had Dazier. So we had all these like stellar, like, that were already spinning around the world, living in Philly. And
this is history, everybody. Take notes.
You know, I just was hanging out, you know, local clubs. There were a lot of parties at Temple. You know, they had a lot of house parties there. So for me, like, I really got deep into college and was like, I'm going to be serious. I'm not, you know, this dance thing, I'm going to stop going to the club. So by my senior year, I had gotten really serious. But I never gave up the club. I went and I graduated and got a job as a social worker. But I always had a passion for empowerment for women, right? And that was because during that time in college, I was dancing with local dancers and stuff, and it was just me, you know. There was very few women, and unless I was hanging out with my Latino posse, like, there was no other women for me to like kind of rock with and dance with in Philly. There were just very few, you know. And so, you know, when it came time to find a space, you know, like, I had decided I'm still going to pursue this, and I'm going to work, right? You know, so I was just like, I'm going to try and do this thing. So Rennie used to have these practices. Rennie Harris was also in Philly. Yeah. And he used to have these practices, and they were just like open sessions. You could go, you know. I went and I would try, and I was terrible. I'm still not super strong at choreo, but I was, you know, I had got better at a later date. But I you know, there was just no space for me there. He was already, you know, putting stuff in theaters. You know, he was already working, and most of his work at that time was mostly men. So you know, I kind of felt like that wasn't a space for me. And I knew that I wasn't going to be able to dance for anyone unless I created something myself, because I couldn't count and I couldn't choreograph, you know. So while I was being a full-time social worker, I did welfare to work, which is women making the transition from welfare to job training, because at the time the welfare laws were changing in PA, and you had to have, even if you were on assistance, you had to have ongoing job training and looking for a job, right?
Wow.
And then after that, I left that job and did transitional housing, which were women moving from shelters to permanent housing or semi-permanent housing. And just, you know, I would go and do home visits to help them try and budget and, you know, continue to pay their bills and stay out of the situation of being, you know, in a shelter or living homelessly. And most of it had a lot to do with management, and also with, you know, issues with partners, you know, because a lot of them ended up in shelters because they didn't have, you know, the best kind of situations in terms of boyfriend or husbands. And, you know, so that was my calling. Like, women, my work for women has always been my calling. You know, this is Ladies of Hip Hop and nothing new. And I want to make clear that, you know, I had very, very supportive men around me, right? I had Monsell. I did. I had Monsell. And little known fact, this dude is like one of the dopest dancers that has ever done it. Dave Austin. Well, Monsell too, but Dave Austin, that was my partner. I don't know, like people don't know about him, but he's like Monsell, you know, he was just this dope house dancer that, you know, once I started really, really getting deep into house, he kind of showed me a new way to move. And little known fact, him and Sekou grew up. They're like brothers. They grew up like brothers. And
oh, wow.
So when Sekou was breaking, they were in a crew together. And people just don't know. And he's still jamming. Dave is still getting down. You know, he's like Sekou. They don't age. He's like mad fit. It's like, dude, come on. Like, come on. You're making me look bad. Yeah. So I had like Monsell, I had Dave, I had Clyde Evans, I had just all the DJs, all my friends in Philly. They were all super. Dwayne. But Philly, what was unique about that Philly situation was that, like New York, the dance scene in terms of where you are is very segregated, right?
Yeah.
In Philly, we were like, if you were in postmodern dance, modern dance, African, hip hop, we all knew each other and we all partied together at the same parties. So I had people like Kate Wawa, who did like site specific work, who came in and did a piece on my company. And I had Charles Anderson, who's this amazing modern dancer who danced, I'm losing it right now, but Ron Brown. He was one of Ron Brown dancers. So his work is very Ron Brown, you know, but we just all knew each other. Alone Koresh, which, you know, they're a huge modern company. And, you know, Koresh Dance Studio was one of our spaces that we, you know, rehearsed at all the time. So it wasn't this like kind of separate situation that I kind of find myself in New York. So it's, you know, we had Raph from Olive Dance Theater, you know, and like we had a monster
squad. You're taking me down memory lane here. I'm like, all the names you're saying, I'm like, yes. I mean, Philly is the reason. Philly really made me just go deep with the dance and to a whole other level. And everyone you're talking about in that sense, I just remember. I mean, when I first saw Monsell too, I was like, who is this huge guy and how could he dance like that?
Yes.
You know, his locking is incredible. And it's amazing to fast forward now 15, 20 years later to see us now and how our careers have unfolded and stuff. And just to go back a bit, because right now you talked about how you brought some guests to your company. I want people to know about that journey. So Montage. What is Montage? What is that dance company? My first experience, just to give you a little bit of a memory, was when I saw Montage in the Philadelphia Hip Hop Dance Festival when there was like a theater dance performance element. And I believe that was in 2006, if I have it right.
Yes, it was a while back.
And Versatile also got to witness the work. And I only share that because that was my first time where I saw women of color only rocking the stage like no other. And of course, inspiration for me, where you had an amazing, beautiful, full figure woman doing tricks and doing everything like she was
forward. Yeah.
And I was like, who are those people? And that's how I really was introduced to your work, your vision, your service to women, your empowerment to women. Like I knew of you, but it was this amazing gift that I got to see this on stage and then see these women of different colors and coming together and just represent and show this positivity of what it takes to put on stage. So that was my interpretation. But if you could please tell the folks, what is Montage? How did that come about? Please go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, Montage was like, you know, we were this like posse of women that, you know, basically what happened was I wasn't finding a space for myself, right, you know, to dance. So back there again, and I was like, I'm gonna create something. And I had this childhood, she was actually my sister's childhood friend, and I was her older sister's childhood friend. And one time we were roommates as well. I reached out to her. She was a Crystal Frazier. She danced since she was a little kid, since maybe 7, you know, did everything. She, you know, ballerina. and she danced for Rennie for a while as well. And it was a time where she wasn't working for him. She had come back from LA. She did, tried the LA thing, and she was in Philly with me. And I said, listen, I want to start an all-female hip hop company. Are you down? Because I can't count. I'll do the business, but I need you to teach me. I need you to teach me how to count, And that's real talk. Like, there's no shame in that, because I'm actually really proud of how far I've come, because it just goes to show you, if you're determined and you really love something, you know, you can make it happen. And so, she was like, yeah, let's do it. And so, we knew all these like dope women that kind of rolled through Philly, and we just got them together like, hey, we're going to start this company. So initially, we just called up folks, come, all you had to do was show up, come through, and you were down. And, which was dope. And there was no, I mean, I know it looked like all women of color, but we did have some white girls too. I have to speak out on Rita Jean, one of the most soulful, dopest white girls I've ever come in. Like, I was just like, yo, she was insane. She was an insane locker, just the way she absorbed what we did was really dope. And so, but it was primarily women of color, all different shapes and sizes, which was why we picked the name Montage, because we were just such a smash up of everything. We had dancers who were tappers, ballerinas, but most of them didn't have hip hop training or hip hop. I mean, back then, this is when training was starting to happen, but they were so young. A lot of them hadn't spent the time in the club that I spent, right? So at that time, it was an interesting kind of thing happening in Philly, where all these people from New York had started hanging out. Now, I had met Sekou years ago, because I had met him through Dave, because Sekou used to come down to Temple parties. So he was like one of the first people. I met him before I knew my husband, 25, 26, 27 years ago. And, but I didn't know Dance Fusion. I didn't know Marge. I knew of Marge because I used to go to Philly and go to New York and go out, but I didn't know anybody there. And I still don't know how I survived that time. I would drive up there, either me and two friends or me by myself. And I didn't know anything about New York. There were no cell phones back then. We would have like a map and like handwritten directions. And like, I'm driving 2 hours from Philly to in a hoopty, because I always had a hoopty car, and hanging out in New York, didn't know nobody, and then drive back the same night, So then at that time when Montage was formed, it was a little later, I think it was 98. So it was the early 2000s when like Terry and all these folks started coming down from New York and hanging out, most of the guys, right? I know Terry was working with Rennie at the time. I think he was doing Facing Mecca, and it was Dave Austin was in that, Mansell, all of them were all in that, right?
Yeah.
And so I met Terry through Mansell, and as soon as we met, we actually hated each other. I really didn't like him at all. Like, he came into one of my Montage rehearsals, and I met him, I was like maybe 7 or 8 months pregnant, and I was still dancing and still doing floor stuff.
Yes, to pregnancy and doing it all.
Yeah, still doing stuff. And he came in and he kind of chuckled at something that we were doing, which was clearly, he was part of and worked with people who founded this culture. So he knew more stuff than we did, right? So we instantly couldn't stand each other. And then, he was in Philly for a long time. He dated one of my girlfriends and had basically moved there and spent a lot of time there. But I would say the different thing about Terry was he came in and he worked with my company. Same thing with Dwayne. There was a lot of criticism of like, why is it got to be all women? And, y'all just trying to be this and y'all trying to be that. And Terry was the first one to come in, him and Dwayne Holland come in and work with my company, train us, and he knew I knew of Marge, and he showed me footage, or Mansell has showed me footage of Tweety. And so that's kind of what set it all off, is when Tweety and I met, which we met through Illadelph. We met through Illadelph. And once we met, from the moment we met, that was it. It was a wrap. We were like,
what year was that when you met Tweety? About what year?
Geez. I mean, Jordan must have been about 2 or 3. So 2003, 2004,
something like that.
Around that. Yeah, like right before I met you.
Wow. Yeah.
Right before I met you.
Because the first time I went to Philly was in 2005 in that capacity, where I was there the entire summer, and I got to meet and dance and train and just open my eyes. Believe it or not, that was my first time in the East Coast, period. I think that's another thing. I love that you brought up that you were pregnant. I think that's why I have so much love and respect for you too, because now our boys, they're both going to college. They're in college.
Girl, we all.
Right? But we also had our kids young in many ways, and I just love how you were able to hold the ground and work and organize and facilitate and make all that happen and let it be known that you're also a mom. I mean, that's a lot of work. And I just have such like admiration for you, because a lot of my girlfriends now are having kids. Like now a lot of my girlfriends, their kids are like 4 and 5 and 6. And I'm like, oh, how cute. Mine's gonna be 20. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I thought from my own mouth, if I haven't said it enough, I praise that you were able to balance all that, and that's real, and how we need to talk about that, because many times women are not, they think once I have a kid, my life is over. Yes, it gets harder. Yes, it's hard. But I think for me, and I think you can relate, it was my fuel to everything I needed to do, and as to how I had to do it, right? And I'm not saying every woman and kid go have a baby. What I'm saying is just, it's not over either.
No, it's not over.
And the way you were able to, I also love how you're talking about this support that you have from the men, these kings supporting their queens. That's how I see it. And that's me too. And there's like definitely some strengths from that. And I hope our audiences and our folks could learn from these conversations, because it's not just a one-way street. It's like this full circle constantly. So thank you for sharing that, because for you to be dancing and directing and you were pregnant, come on.
Yeah. And Crystal had left at that time too. Crystal went back to LA. So it was crazy. It was, because at the time when Montage started blowing up, I was still working full time. First of all, I was still working full time. I decided to have a baby and run the company at the same time, because it wasn't enough, of course. And I was married, so, but my husband at the time was, and still is, the Roots production manager. And at that time, they were called the Grateful Dead of hip hop, because they were never home. They were never home.
So are you kidding me?
He toured for years, and so my mom was like, my mom used to refer to Jordan as my backpack, because he was with me all the time. He's been to every show, every performance. And Mariella, I do not do everything. Every performance, that's why he knows all y'all. He feels like y'all are family. He sees y'all and he's like, hey. So like,
I mean, shout out to Jordan. I have seen that kid grow up from like this. He was a baby, and same with Leo. I think there's so, like, my son goes to the community and he's a part of the family. People know. We had to bring him everywhere. It's just, I'm sad that my son didn't partake into dance classes way sooner. He would always just kick it on the side and play video games and just say what's up. But as long as he was with me, it made it all much better.
Yeah, it sunk in. Listen, mine gets busy. Don't let Jordan fool you. And Stretch has been asking me for like the last 2 years, when is he gonna, he's like, I see him. When is he going to start doing this? And I was like,
Jordan, come on.
Listen, he knows every single one of these new dances. He gets so busy. He for a little bit, he was training with Miss V, because he really he fell in love with locking. He met Don Campbell at Illadelph. And I have a picture of them and I can't find it, but he fell in love with locking. With locking. And he really, really got into funk music. He has his face.
It's amazing. Like, I can't wait to see him dance. I mean, I was so happy when my son finally said, Mom, I'm gonna do this. Nice. And he was 16 and it's like boom. It just clicked.
I still have hope.
But hey, they're still around us 24/7, and the fact that you were able to manage, first of all, go to school, and work full time, and your husband is like touring the world with the Roots, doing his own thing. You weren't single, but in many ways you were alone, right?
Right, exactly, exactly.
You created this village, and then you created Montage. And I'm sure, and I could only relate how the highs and lows that go with any company. I always say the hardest thing of keeping a company together is the personalities, because it's hard. It's the people.
Let's talk about it.
And not like I'm perfect. I know that.
No, I'm a lot.
This constant, thing that we got to manage. But I mean, if I would have known you back then in Philly, I would have been in Montage. I recall just like,
come on, let's go. We're going to make a new company.
Exactly. Right? There we go.
No, it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And coming out on the other side of it, because I did end it at a point. But what came out of it, what I didn't kind of get to, because I'm, going here and there, was once I met Tweety, and I met who is my queen forever and always, Marjorie Smart. I started bringing them down to Philly to train my company, because I could see that, and like, they didn't have the authenticity that they were supposed to have. They didn't understand it. They weren't driving 2 hours, to DC. I used to hang out in DC tough too, in the warehouse and all these clubs down there, because they used to have these huge spaces with just, you go from room to room to room, and it just be, hundreds of people, different DJs. And so DC, Trenton, Philly, New York, would be my spot. But I had a small crew, and it was mostly all the guys. Like Cricket would roll with me to DC, because all these dudes were all in Philly at the time, and so they were missing that, although very talented and all mostly trained in some way, shape, or form. Like Diane, who is the girl that you were saying, full figure dancer, she was a hoofer, wow. And she, so she by training, and she was a dance by training as well. So, we had such a deep kind of bench of women to get down with, but I needed them to know what I know, and I needed them to know the women that I knew, right?
Yes.
And so even though we trained with Why Not, and we trained with Moncel, and we trained with Terry, and we trained with Dwayne, and all these dope men that came in, it was the women that really changed that whole kind of wave of what we do. And then that's how Ladies of Hip Hop got started, because I was just like, other women were calling like, can I come through? I heard you have this training, and it's women, and it's all day. And I was like, sure. So, it really wasn't intentional. Like, I want to start a battle, and I want to have events and performances. We were already doing our own full evening length shows in Philly by that time, So,
So maybe really, then, since we fast forward to that, please also, I think many people in this current time, especially the generations that I've taught, they know you for being the founder and this amazing facilitator and organizer of the infamous and the one and only festival, Ladies of Hip Hop. Ladies of Hip Hop, I will advocate, I will have your back. Ladies of Hip Hop, that's how I feel. Like, it is something that you just embrace and bring people and welcome them and provide the space. So it's beautiful to hear that. It was not like you had this plan. What I'm hearing is that you saw a need. You saw that there was a need in the community. Women are coming up to you, and they have these ideas, and here you are, this amazing organizer, facilitator, visionary, and boom, out of complete need and complete authentic experiences and relationships, you're able to thrive and take it to this next level of amazing work in the community, which is Ladies of Hip Hop. So please tell us about Ladies of Hip Hop. When did you, we only got like 20 minutes. I'm like,
I know. I'm sorry. I'm going to keep it short.
Please.
So it started in 2003, unofficially, but our first flyer, so that 2003 was like, I brought down March, Tweety, a bunch of folks. And then 2004, I think, was our official flyer, and I brought down Tweety, Honey Rockwell, who's a beast and still a beast. And you're talking about a mom that gets busy. She still breaks and flips and stuff. And she had 4 kids. Shout out to Honey down in Atlanta. She has her own studio down there. If you don't know, you should know. Um, so Honey Rockwell, Tweety, and Crystal, my partner for Montage, she was back in Philly and she taught as well. And so then every year it just started to get bigger and bigger. And then by the 5th year, I decided to, like, you know, open up the other elements, right? I wanted to have a space for all women who were part of the culture. So I had live painters, I had all female DJs, I had like in Philly, it was much easier for me to do because I had Temple as my alma mater and also Drexel, not yet, but later on in that process, because I went back to school to get my master's. So, you know, I just saw that I saw the need. What I never in a million years thought it would be what it is. I think it is what it is, not only from the amazing women that I have, but Stretch kept pushing me. He kept saying, you got to come and do this in New York. This is dope. Nobody does this. And this is a man who toured around the world. Yeah. He toured around the world and was telling me, he's like, yo, no one's doing this. You know, I think there's maybe one or two other B-girl events, you know, but they're specific to breaking, you know, so... And so he was part of the reason why. I mean, we moved to New York for jobs and stuff. You know, it's just like one of those things where life, you know, kind of was the perfect timing. You know, it was the perfect timing. And at that time, I had ended Montage maybe a couple years prior to me moving. I moved in 2007 or 2008, and I had ended Montage, and it was really a rough. Kind of like that was my baby. Like everyone thinks Lazy Hip Hop is my baby, but Montage was my baby, and it kind of imploded from the inside out. You know, personalities, you know, cattiness. But it's not just because we're women, because men are catty too. But
that's great.
Too. It was just time, you know, it was time to let go, time to move on. I was very upset and torn by it. But I had my support. I had Moncel, I had Tweety, I had Marge, and they all were just like showing me so much love. I Stretch. He was like, forget them. Let's do Ladies Hip Hop in New York. And then it happened. Boom. It happened. And then he helped me start the first battle with, you know, he just helped me kind of set it up, you know, figure it out. And from there on forward, it's just been like growing.
And thank you for those opportunities, Michelle. I'll never forget my first Ladies of Hip Hop in New York. I remember bringing some of my girls from LA. That was after Philadelphia and me getting more really active in the battle scene. At some point I decided, okay, I'm gonna battle for a while. Why not? And just going to Ladies of Hip Hop, my eyes and my heart. I know dancers can relate. I felt like I was at home to see so many strong women judging, DJ, producing. Everything was women. I was like, wait, this is my calling to even a further angle, right? Like it just felt like home. And you always made, for me specifically, you just always were so welcoming and so loving and just so kind. And that's why I always just came back, because it just felt like a reunion of amazing women all under one roof. So I recall my first time was like 2007, I believe. And that's when I took the girls, and I've been there several times since.
Yes. And I mean, and I'm glad you did, because, you know, it wasn't the first time or the second time or the third time that we connected. I think, you know, in recent years, we've really like come to respect and know each other. And so it is about, you know, Lazy Hip Hop is about family. You know, I have the same DJs, not only because they're good, but because they're family. You know, like it's not about the most popular, you know, we have this conversation all the time, these things with judges and teachers. And it's like, I want people who know what they're doing, who are gifted and talented and well-educated, good teachers. You know, it's not, I mean, are there dancers that are like at the top of their battle game or whatever? Yeah, there is. But, you know, how are they living and passing on this culture? What have they done? What have they given back as well? You know, like, it's really like, okay, you're at the top of your game. You're dope. You can teach, you know, the culture, but what have you given back? right?
Yeah.
And so that's the people that I'm looking for, you know, and that's why, you know, I continue to bring people like you and Tweety. I don't care how many times she teach hip hop, she gonna keep coming until
That's
y'all
what I'm
learn
saying.
it the way
Yes.
she know it. You know what I'm saying? So
Everybody needs
that's
to
my
experience. Everybody needs to experience Tweety's hip hop class.
Listen.
Hello.
Listen.
She's one of the women who has been paving the way for so long already. And she, you know, it's not like she's that old. She's been putting in time.
She's young.
She's still young. Exactly. She's in her early 40s, just to put it there out there. You know, so she's
6 or 7 years younger than me. So she's definitely, she's going to be around for a long time.
And people need to take that class. But no, ladies of hip hop, I want to tell you, you have been a major inspiration in my life, even with my own festival. I mean, Rennie Harris's Philadelphia Festival for sure goes down in the books. It's one of the first festivals to bring legends and people, icons, right? But yours, what made yours so unique is, and this is what stood out to me, you had the classes, you had the battles, but it didn't end there. You had a showcase where you celebrated the women. I remember when that happened and I went the second time and I got to perform, I came back to Lee and my team and I'm like, we're adding a third day. We need a showcase because the battles are great, but it's a lot of energy and I'm ready to showcase the amazing artists and choreographers that need a platform to showcase their work. Yeah. And there's been a few artists, I think, that are listening right now that have been part of our festival, specifically the choreography showcase part, twice or 3 times. And I do it because I just believe in them. And they're beautiful and they have something to share. And your festival did that. I just have to say, like, I came back, I'm like, oh yeah, our festival's 3 days. It's going to be educational, it's going to be performance, and it's going to be community-based, right? A celebration element. As to why VersaStyle now with the whole, because the VersaStyle was formerly also known as the Flourish Foundation, but now we're VersaStyle Performance Education Community. And
y'all doing stuff.
Your festival led that way for me to think that way, because you just can't battle. You just can't teach. Where's the moment where you also celebrate the beauty that's within everybody?
That's my favorite part, actually. You know what I mean? Because you saw us on stage, you saw Montage on stage, and you know, like, a lot of people haven't seen me perform, a lot of people haven't seen me dance, you know, but you've seen me perform. All of my brothers out there, my sisters out there that were in the clubs when you know, I know I joke about my age, but I'm about to be 50 in October. So I put in a lot of time in the club.
Well, first of all,
I don't hang out anymore.
You look 35. Let's be that. You look amazing. Okay.
Thank you. It's the re-read. But you know, I'm not young. You know what I mean? So you're not, you know, and I came up in Philly, you know, we weren't walking around the clubs with cameras and stuff. When I would come to New York, I would see that, you know, like people videotaping and taking pictures. Amanda was always there shooting. I can't wait to see her. One day, Amanda, if y'all know who I'm talking about, one day she's going to do a showing, and I'm telling you, it's going to have the dopest pictures ever, because she was always there on top, like taking the pic. So, that wasn't really part of our community, right? You know, we would go and get lost in it. And it was the same here, but I'm saying, like, that being filmed and all that kind of stuff was very much part of New York at very early on, you know?
Yeah.
So there's not a lot of footage of me, you know, because I had made that transition into, number one, like, this is the way things went for me. Being a mom was the first and most important thing to me in the world. And I had made the decision that even though I'm going to give up going out a lot, you know, this is what a parent does. This is what you do. That was, you know, so it wasn't necessarily sacrifice, because I loved it. I love being a mom.
Yes.
And then second in life is family. Yeah. And then dance, right? So you deal with all of that. And you know, and I had work, and I you know my journey. I went back to school for my master's, but then I got into TV production. I was working full time in that, and still trying to keep a toe in the door, right? Thank you, Mansell. You're gonna have to share some of that footage with me.
Yes, I was just gonna tell Mansell.
He's got so much footage. He's got so much.
Yes.
But so it was really about choices that, like, you can't do all things well, so I was a parent first, and then I had decided that I really, really wanted to create something amazing and really well done for our community, so they're not saying, oh, this is great for a hip-hop event. It's just a great event, period.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? And so
yes,
so my priorities changed, and so I've always been in this internal battle of like giving up dance and giving up performance, and
we're never gonna let you, Michele. Sorry, you're stuck.
I'm coming back.
I'm
coming back. Shout out to Adesla in the house. I'm coming back. There are people. I think like when you've been part of those things like Philadelphia and House Dance Conference and the Shelter and these amazing parties and stuff, it's kind of hard to have that same. The experience is not the same. And it's the same thing for our iconic parties that we had in Philly. We had clubs that don't even exist anymore, and so for me, those were moments in time. I'm not really trying to hold on to them or relive them in any way, shape, or form. And so I don't go out as much, and I don't, I'm not really into the like filming myself and putting it on Instagram. It's just not me. This is for millennials. This is for people who, like, we do it because we have to. But,
I know. I hear you. But with that said, Michele, I realize I have like 7 minutes left with you, and I want to like have like this. It's too much. I'm gonna need an episode 2, and we're gonna call this like Ladies of Hip Hop Conversations now. Like, I keep having conversations with certain people where it's just not enough. 1 hour.
Everybody, these have been really good. I just want you to know your episodes have been great.
But what's next for you right now? What's next for you and Ladies of Hip Hop? Is it even Ladies of Hip Hop? But like, what is next? And with that, also maybe you can intertwine it with what advice do you also have for the next generation of women right now? To women specifically, I think they need to hear it from you.
In 7 minutes. So up next, I mean, we are pivoting. We're gonna do the battle online. I haven't announced it yet because I'm always still trying to figure out how to do things well. So I'm watching a lot of things that are being done to make sure it's a fit for who I am and for what I like to put out there.
Of course.
But I'm pretty sure we're going to do a panel on a battle online just to do something this year because we miss all our people. I am going to start teaching in the fall at University of Wisconsin in Madison. I'm going to be an adjunct professor teaching a women in hip hop course. And so I'll be there.
I'm so happy. Congrats. Because we need you in these institutes, and that's a whole conversation also for the next one.
It's a whole.
You and I could talk about that all day, every day too. Keep going.
Indeed. Personally, I'm really interested in working with other people who are outside of my inner circle. So me and Latasha Barnes have been chatting and connecting a lot, who is another amazing human who's so smart. And I'm just learning a lot from her, but I'm also trying to like support my community, right? And so that I'm helping my guys, Moncel, Dwayne. I'm just working with folks and like, how can I help? Honestly, like, you need me to build a website, let me do that. Me and Tasha started a book club because I think, they don't really realize there's a lot of nerds in hip hop. And so we're going to come together and read some books.
Tasha. Could I join the book club?
Yes, Paperback Crew. It's Paperback Crew on Instagram. We just started our first read, Babylon Girls. So you better get up on that. What else? I mean, I'm really pivoting trying to do local stuff and support, trying to build with youth in New York City. So we're partnering with Alvin Ailey to do some stuff. Like this year, they were sponsoring the entire festival. And thank you, Jackie. Me and you had so many conversations about that, about what it meant and whether I should do it. And, and so that's happening.
Isn't that crazy, the full circle? Because you were talking on how Alvin Ailey was like on replay, obsessed. And then boom, here you are now. It's in partnership with Ladies of Hip Hop. You guys heard that? Like, it doesn't. She did that. Michele did that. I'll never forget when you called me. I'm like, hello, yes.
You were like, yeah. What are you thinking? I was like, oh, okay. But but yeah, real talk, when I'm on that stage, very often, like, I'm so overwhelmed, and I really do it's very, like, chokes me up, because, like, even though I'm not dancing on that stage, I still am like, I'm here. I've made it. This is all I ever wanted in my life, was to be part of that, like, amazingness, you know? So, so yes for that. What else? Let's see. I got 4 minutes.
And maybe some advice, some advice to these girls, because I see a lot of beautiful ladies making comments right now. They love you. Their whole thing is inspiring, but keep going.
Don't take the normal path, right? And, like, get outside of the folks that are your crew and your peoples, right? Because you need to build, and you need to build with communities outside. I mean, every hip hop dancer, this is not just for women, every hip hop dancer on this thread, we need to build outside of our community in order to sustain our community. And Jackie knows exactly what I'm saying, right? And go to other things that don't have anything to do with dance, and go to these conferences, these educational conferences and stuff. Like, get outside of, you know, I know you love dance, but real talk, it's going to be 20 years later and you haven't figured it out, and you're still trying to dance, and you're still trying to go to that same party. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if in 25, 30 years, you haven't changed anything about yourself and advanced yourself in any way, shape, or form, then that's kind of sad, you know? Like, and I mean, I look at, I see it happen all the time. Some of the dopest dancers, you're not always going to be the dopest dancer. You're just not. Like, I don't care what you think, you know, your body at some point is going to be like, you're going to have a baby, or you're going to get old, you're going to have a knee injury, a back injury, something, right? And so expand your mind, expand your community. I worked in TV, and when I tell you, I was one of 2 Black people on a TV show for 6 years.
Beautiful.
And I love all of those people. Like, those are some real life, long-term friends that I can, you know. So anyway, I don't know. We can go on forever, but
we can go on forever. For everybody that's listening, I have like 1 minute left. I just want to say, Michele, thank you. Because even through this conversation, I learned so much about you. To hear about your backstory and how you grew up. There will be a part 2, Michele. Sorry to make you feel pressure.
No, this is amazing. I usually hate these things, but this was great.
It's needed, and they need to hear it from 2 women that are making it happen, because there's still so much we could talk about when it comes to administrative work, facilitating, about hip-hop and
higher education,
colleges, arts education. Girl, we're having a whole other conversation. But thank you so much for your support.
Thank you.
Versatile Ladies of Hip Hop will come strong again next year for the next year's festival, Los Angeles version. I love you, Michele.
Thank you for all your support,
respect, and love. And thank you. And right now, I just want to honor Marjorie. I know she's up there,
always
smiling big at all the work we're doing together. I saw that.
See them words? You see them words? That's the words to live by.
Live true, and dance free. I love you, girl.
Exactly. Love you. Bye.
Bye.